welcome to Hemant Gupta, first of all. Glad to have you back.
Same here, Bunty, co-holding this space, co-sensing, co-discovery.
Yeah. So on both our behalves, I welcome the audience, and we begin on a different kind of thing today. Uh, I was wondering if we can speak about the pace of life. Uh, of late, I have been finding that it's been a struggle to uh, catch up with people or them wanting to catch up with me, and there are a lot of things uh, in terms of communication through various media that we are telling each other we want to be with each other or we want to talk to each other, but time is always short. So that was one thing that was running in my mind, and it's not happening with one or two people. I think with almost professionally or personally, uh, across ages, I'm finding that everybody says there is shortage of time. um, So, Hemant, we too are also kind of in that bracket a little bit. Luckily, we do find time every few weeks. Um, is there really a shortage of time in our lives?
Always, wonderful invocation. I think at least the one thing with such kind of conversations and questions is it pushes one to stop and reflect and take a shot at it. If one is coming from a deeper, authentic space, which means a natural slowing down, making it a little more deliberate and effortful than just giving cliche responses. Um, so a couple of things come up for me, Bunty, when you mention this. I remember almost 10 years back when I used to read a lot of books. I came across this book called Take Your Time by Eknath Easwaran. Wonderful, wonderful read. I would urge people to read the book. And if I remember right, what he was trying to invoke is yes, for a long period of time, we are sort of drafted into the world army. The word draft here is slightly technical because it's a in the past, I don't know about the current constitution mandates of different countries, but in the past, when countries used to go for war, they would draft people into war. So you didn't have a choice. You could be called in for duty for the nation
Yeah,
anytime or the
yeah,
kingdom. Uh, so in some sense, when we come into the life that we come into, a lot of things happening around us, we don't have control over them. We don't have channeling around them. We are drafted into their ways of working, their pace of working, their purposes. And of course, when I say they, it's not a homogeneous, it's a heterogeneous. Different people are pursuing different things. Um, and then over a period of time, when through different rabbit holes, people come to this realization and pursuit of questioning them. What do they want? Who are they? Why do they want what they want? Where are these wants coming from? Are these wants my own want, or I want this because somebody else is wanting it and I like that and I'm just copying it? Sort of mimetic complex memes. So I think when someone goes down this path of a contemplation-driven pursuit, one becomes a little more aware of the situation at hand. But that doesn't itself solve for the increasing pace, which you're right. Technology has done a lot of things, and so technology, globalization, urbanization, industrialization, knowledge economy, conversation economy, attention economy, uh, whatever we may want to constitute it as, it is facing the world in a different way. Now you have so many people who are sending you notifications. Your to-do list has so many things to be done. Uh, And the question to be asked is, what is becoming faster and faster? Hence, what is becoming slower and slower? What is becoming more and more? Hence, what is becoming less and less? And if we go down this rabbit hole, we do realize that this instant gratification, this instant inter-reacting world that we are in, inter-demanding world that we are in, mutually pushing world that we are in, is definitely setting a different pace for each other. However, if we embark on certain wisdom practices or ecology of practices, given all the constraint and the situation, we still can show up in a manner which is slightly different than earlier. What I mean by that is, I don't need to. So if you ask me a question, I don't need to. My 10-year-old self, or a 10-year or 12-year back, I would immediately on the question, and if I don't have the answer, I would get completely rattled. Oh, I don't have an answer. How would I speak for the next 3-4 minutes? There's this urge. But over a period of time, due to practices and contemplation, one becomes comfortable with the discomfort. You're a discomfort coach, and that's where we have to. I think we all have to face these discomforts of the external demands and pace, and how do we pace the inner. So by channeling the inner and showing up in different manner, our contributions are slightly different, and our savorings are very different. So even if I get that 5 minute with you, I savor it very differently than when I don't have that sense of presence and sense of practice. Uh, uh, these are some of the things that are coming up for me. Summing up, yes, it's pacing up. B, is there something in our hand? Yes, those wisdom practices and various contemplation practices with which we can contribute differently and savor differently, and have sort of shock absorbers.
I'll still go on a tangential this. I have a lot of questions coming up for almost every line you said, but I would rather ask one underlying uh, assumption that I'm making. Do you think silence is something that we are not understanding? Is that creating a lot of discomfort in us?
Yeah, absolutely. And if I double click, a very good friend of mine, and wonderful human being, Saurabh Garg. So Saurabh has this interesting habit of. So he runs this organization called C4E, which is a digital marketing agency, and he's trying to do some interesting experiment of organizing people and organizing work in a different way. But the most important thing that I've known Saurabh for 10 years is, he randomly reads books, and the ones that he finds good, he just purchases 5, 10, 15 copies and randomly sends it to people in his network. So one fine day, a book came my way, and the title of the book was Silence.
Oh,
Yeah, I think it's Erling Kage, if I'm getting the pronunciation and name right, written by a professional mountaineer of sorts, who, when he goes on these expeditions, you obviously don't have crowd there, and you have to spend time with yourself. So he discovered different textures of silence and different practices of silence and different benefits of silence. And he has definitely remarked, uh, that yes, that is something that we miss a lot today in the urban landscape, soundscape, notification scape, uh, to-do list scapes. We do miss that thing called silence. And one last thing that comes to my mind is, if I look at Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, one of the tenets is uh, stilling the modifications of mind. So the mind is constantly on this modification spree, one thought after another, on a sort of highway. So thoughts are speeding at the rocket speeds, one after the other. And one thought goes with an accident, you have a bad rap page. Everybody every thought would just ram in. So yes, we do need those practices of stilling and silence. And uh, sorry, just one last bit that comes to mind. A French thinker, Arthur Schopenhauer, had an interesting quote. Are your words coming from more words, or are your words coming from silence?
I have a provocative question for you.
Please.
All these are other people's words that you said. Would you like to
Yes.
share something from your silence if you can? Any experiment that kind of either gave you good results or bad results, it does not matter. It's just the process that I want to understand. Has it ever happened that in the middle of some business, whatever that you've been doing, like hardcore work and stuff like that, have you been able to pause and reflect and get something which is your own and uh, not borrowed? I'm not saying it is not inspiring. Uh, I loved the last line because it kind of preempted my question. So it is that all of us think the same things, but just that would you want to bring up some Hemantism here?
Yeah. Um, we've come to this crossroad earlier also, Bunty,
Yeah,
pointing out
yeah,
this specific thing.
yeah,
And एक कविता है जो sometimes some poems happen through me.
yeah.
There is one that happened which is कुछ कह रहा होगा, कुछ गहरा होगा, कुछ कह रहा होगा, कुछ गहरा होगा, सब आता है वहीं से, तो क्या हुआ इसमें चेहरा होगा. So it doesn't matter where it is coming from, who it is coming from. I think what matters is the idea, the essence, uh, and if I can assimilate it, if I can imbibe it, if I can resonate with it. And yes, there are times when you modify it, you create it differently, you practice, experience it differently. So yes, I do have. Earlier, I never used to have these practices up until 2017, 18. But last 7, 8 years, I've been constantly enriched by these practices, and everything that comes out of me through me, whether it's those scribbles that I share with people, or some poems that happen, or articles that I write, or the book that I wrote, or the dialogues that I do, I think they all have they come from the nutrition of from the nutritious silence that fertiles the soil very differently of this presence.
Beautiful. Um, if you permit, I would want to go a little deeper there. Um, so when I was just contemplating what you were saying in the last few sentences specifically, which was your methodology of how you use a mix of your own silence and other people's words to figure out truths of your own, if I were to just create a thought here. I was re-looking at my own premise of how I approach silence or what happens. Uh, there is this sense of rawness because there is nothing to fall back upon when I don't use words. And earlier it used to be extremely uh, disconcerting. Uh, it happens now also. It's not that I am always comfortable with my silences. Uh, sometimes self-imposed, sometimes coming from outside, sometimes sheerly because of the overwhelming nature of my persistent communication with A, B, C, D, my devices and my books and my. So what I realize is that over a period, I have come to rest sometimes in that silence without putting the burden of some wisdom has to arise. If you understand what I mean. earlier that was a big deal also, that, oh, even now it happens. I enjoy the uh, sudden insights that arise from nowhere. So yesterday, day before, there was this. I think it might be wrong usage of words that I realized when in hindsight. But the thought that struck me was that will, the word will, uh, is kind of springing from a meaning which is closer to determination, whereas willing is a much more milder and enjoyable word in the way one can perceive. So, is it that willing can help you become braver, stronger, and have more will? Was something that I was contemplating. So, when I was talking to this client, he was using a lot of negative words. Uh, are you able to hear me? Is there a problem with the connection?
As somehow the signals are getting lost.
Uh,
Yeah, I it's okay.
you have proper
Give me a
internet at your
second.
end?
Let me just check.
रबी मम्मी रबी इंटरनेट वाईफाई यूज थी करे या बंद करण लायचेस
I have switched to the Wi-Fi at my end. Let's see.
हाँ नहीं आई एम ऑल्सो चेकिंग एट माई एंड
स्वीकार हो जाता है थोड़ा सा.
शुड आई बिगिन नाउ
Yeah, absolutely.
सो I was talking to this client the other day, and he was using a lot of negative terms to define himself. And it was a challenge that I was also wondering what is it that I could say that would convince him that he was good enough at this point to work on the challenge that he was facing. The regular things that I kept saying and whatever interaction I was having, I was kind of facing a wall. And I did give him that same example. I said, look, the kind of challenge that you are facing, I am facing with you right now, but I am not overwhelmed by it. I am just trying to see what are the different ways that I can look at it. And that led me to this line of why does he not have the will to fight right now, whatever challenge he is having? And why is he not willing to accept the challenge for what it is rather than color it with some judgment? And that is where the difference between the word will and willing came to me. And it was an insight that made me smile. And I called up another friend who was also struggling with something and told her, look, you can look at your problem from this point of view. So these insights happen from silence, and they are interesting. I don't know where they come from. Uh, Sometimes I think as a writer, I have been doing this digging the meaning of words or where they correlate and co-connect. Sometimes there is a third meaning that arises from them. Uh, would you be able to share something of your journey once you go into this silence? Practices seem to be individual uh, times and spaces of effort that you consciously perhaps try. I'm presuming that. But how does it interweave back into your system and how do you use them? How do those connections happen? Uh, and in that space, because other people's words are being used, so memory is being used, which is a general thing that anybody else who's not practicing silence could also access. So, what is Hemant's particular way of finding these connections? Is there a way? Is there a sense of surrender? I do not know. How do you look at it, and would you be able to share something of your inner journey there?
Sure. So, a couple of things come to mind. One is uh, I have this framework called 4S model. which is starts, stop, speed, slow. So whatever I do, I try and become aware of myself in the moment as to what's happening. And then can I start something here? Can I stop something here? Can I speed something? Can I slow something in terms of actions or speech? And using the platform of action and speech, the experience of seeing whether the thinking and feeling corresponding to it is slowing down or starting or speeding or stopping. So that is the kind of practice that I've been doing over a period of time. And in the initial period, you don't get correspondences very easily. But over a period of time, when you do this consistently, you do get correspondences in the other think, feel, say, do domain. So using the architecture of think, feel, say, do, that's the architecture that I keep coming back to also in the book. Because do is a slightly more grounded and we have concreteness to our doing, more visibility to our doing, and so is our speech. So using them as the ground to shift the grounds of thinking and feeling, or the volcano of thinking and feeling in different. That's the practice. Second, in the last almost 10, 12 years, we must have facilitated almost 1,000 silent circles across different, whether it was Thank You India project or Commissioners Marathon or Jamming for India Today conclave or jamming internally with team or something. The question that comes up is, were these silent circles all the same in the sense, were they with the same purpose or same methodology, same intentions? The answer is no. They all had different textures and purposes. So sometimes, in fact, I mean, I had small post that silences come in different variety. There is the resting silence, there is the restless silence, there is the aggressive silence and passive aggressive silence. There is the healing silence. There is the in the wake of death, the silence. There is a silence in the deep sigh, and there is a panting silence. Uh, there is a there is a sense of having a sense of completing something silence and a sense of how much more to do silence. So I think they come in different varieties, and uh, before, during, and after of the silence has a lot to weigh in on the texture of the silence. And finally, how do they directly correspond to the input output? Uh, is difficult to lay finger on, Bunty. I mean, I think give some answers. They may be smart, intelligent, right? But I feel there is a lot of non-linearity to these practices. You cannot have a one-to-one correlation with them. But you have a sense of feeling that it's working rather than a very conscious thinking, yeah, as a connector. It's a sense of intuition and feeling over a period of time that it's working.
Such a beautiful answer. So many layers of understanding to so many varieties of silence. I honestly, I haven't gone down that track ever, but I could relate to quite a few, specifically the in resting and restless silence. Specifically, when I am on the cushion, I do know both of these are sometimes very, very close to each other. So, I had another question coming up there. is it possible to, because you use the word silent circles, is it possible to create the kind of conversations we have on the podcast? There are silences, and then I'm waiting for you to gather your thoughts and come up with something, or uh, you allow me the space to uh, form a question, because these words don't automatically exist. I do not have an idea of what I'm going to ask. Uh, it has also happened, not with you though, but even in other podcasts, sometimes it has happened that I've started speaking and I've made the line as I go along. I do not know what the next word is coming from me. It is just the trust that I'm genuinely wanting to understand our, perhaps the word that you keep using, co-sensing what's coming, that will help the audience to kind of find some peace. I trust this deepest layer of whatever is conscious at this stage, uh, to contribute to what I am doing, at least in terms of the conversations that I have. Uh, yeah, there is no hurry, there is no pressure to be right or to be smart. Often, when I go back and look at some of the conversations, one line here and there, very rarely do I go through the entire conversation again, except if there are many editing requirements where technical issues have happened. I find silence has this quality of uh, holding us. Like there is a sense of safety uh, that sometimes arises from it. Even when one is feeling uh, a deep sense of discomfort, there is still that silence is will hold you. There's something that will come up. Just wait with it for a while. Uh, so, to use a very everyday phrase that the Sai Baba of Shirdi had used, Shraddha and Saburi. So, the Saburi thing is not really understood very well, uh, specifically in today's times when we are discussing silence and when we can communicate with each other so fast. Uh, can you talk about some factors of silence which are not directly related, since you did put up a correlation in how it has transformed your interactions in the last 7 8 years, uh, whether in terms of speech or deed. But can you go beyond that and just speak a little about what is your understanding of silence and what it brings, and why would you have opted to go for this route? In India, there are thousands of loud ways of proclaiming your search of the divine, if I were to call it that. And maybe all of them have their own merits. I would not even deny they are very enjoyable. They are very uh, genuine and deep sometimes. But why would you have opted for silence, and what has it kind of given you as an overview or an umbrella view of life?
When I think that when we start becoming self-aware, when we go on the journey of self-awareness, we there are different methodologies in modalities. Few of them invoke us to turn the gaze and look at our body, how our body is, posture, the movement, when does it demand even those micro shifts when the homeostasis is slightly, it's disconcerting and you want to be in the concert. So you just do like this, thoda sa aise, right? You just keep shifting. So if one becomes aware of one's posture and body as a ground for understanding oneself, one can see the patterns over a period of time. The patterns of when the body demands those micro shifts, when the body demands those micro rests, uh, and then building it up into macro shifts and macro rests. And then over a period of time, if one becomes a little more aware of it, one realizes that one thing is to give into the demand of that need for the micro shift or micro rest, or to rebel or discipline to not give it and see what happens. And over a period of time, when you do these micro practices, you become slightly more aware. It's like, when you have a television, पहले वो analog black and white आता था और अभी high definition pictures है. So in the high definition, you have a very different texture of what you see. Similarly, when you go to these practices, you get a very high definition version of your own self. It gives more clarity, right seeing, better seeing. And then if we take this particular example and say, use this for one's speech, how words are coming out. Am I even looking at you? Am I understanding your micro expressions? Am I right now just trying to boost my ego in the moment? Or am I wanting to connect with you? And how does this connect to my overall overarching mission? The next word, the next sentence, the next answer. How is this connected to my overarching mission and time on this planet? I think when you go down these practices, they help you establish different connections. And you know that there are no very clear linearities too, but you get a sense that you are establishing those connections. And then the journey over a period of time, your relationship with stillness and activity, silence, noise, and signal changes. You're able to live with them differently, thrive with them differently. Most times, not all times, you still have a lot of fumble, bumble, jumble, struggle. But you go back to position is to come to these ecology of practices and springboard from them.
Are these changes lasting, or how does this work?
This is very close to the analogy of fitness, Bunty. Suppose I go to a gym today for an hour, it would have certain impact today. Tomorrow I don't go, day after tomorrow I don't go, then again I go. But if I have a consistent practice over a period of time, few things shift. A, my ability to go again to the gym is different. My experience of the gym is different. What I do through the day during those gymming days are different. So I think the effect of these are on a spectrum of immediate few hours to long term in the way they contribute to the practice and how they contribute to the non-practice time. So if you have done a good walk today in the morning, the endorphins of the process would have a role to play right now as you are presencing here. And suppose today was your 100th day of continuously walking, there would be some cumulative effect also.
How do you look at responsibility towards the self? Is there a concept like that in your head? I can give you a bit of a context there. So the first question that arose in my head was, is there no holiday? And then I realized that this question is coming from a deeper place where all of us are used to being so packed in everything else that we do that we seek holidays. So it is our choice and our relating to what we want to do with our time and space. So, in that context, how do you view responsibility? Do you have any such concept called responsibility? I can add one layer that I had read many years ago, that responsibility actually means ability to respond. And it is, and in my head, I had completed it that it is not duty like we think, at least in the Indian context. When we say, ये आपका responsibility है, so it suddenly means that this is your duty. If you don't do it, then there is some guilt associated with it. So it may not be. That is one context that I try and be conscious of.
Again, a wonderful invocation, Bunty. So I'll try to invoke a 2x2 here of action on the x-axis and y-axis fruits.
Mm.
And I'll come back to it. And the second is concept of adaptive duty, maladaptive duty, adaptive non-duty, and maladaptive non-duty. Let's go to the first grid. So imagine on the x-axis we have effortful karma, effortless karma. And y-axis we have fruit and fruitlessness. So we get 4 quadrants. Effortful karma, we get the fruit. Effortful karma, fruit nahi mila. Effortless karma, fruit bhi mil gaya. Effortless karma, fruit nahi mila. I think we are in all the 4 quadrants over time, if we become aware. Our relationships can keep shifting with each of the 4 quadrants. Our comfort zones, our experiment zones could be shifting in all 4. And over a period of time, you realize the beauty of renewing relationship with the effortful and effortlessness. And you dance with both over a period of time as you keep experimenting. This also coincides well with Sri Aurobindo's integral yoga. One of the interpretation in could be said that so what you're looking for are certain steps of spirituality, and at some step you do see this as a sadhana, but it becomes it becomes your second nature to do. You don't feel burdened, overly burdened all the time in the way that one can conceptualize it or one feels. So that's the first part of the answer. The second part of the answer is the last 100, 200 years on the planet have seen the rise and rise of all kinds of rights, rights against racism, rights for LGBTQ, rights for women, right for education, right to water, right to services, all kinds of rights. There have been good moves in the society per se. But I also believe that an individual, a community, a nation, a civilization that's overly indexing everything on rights and forgets its duties is bound to bring the civilization down in some drastic manner. So there has to be a balance of duty and rights. And there are some adaptive duties, how duties can be adaptive for an individual over a period of time in ways that we don't see them when we start doing them. But over a period of time, we re-establish our relationship with them. And then there are, yes, maladaptive duties. They burden you, they degenerate you. So anything that is degenerating an individual and the person doesn't have means to self-heal and or rely on an external structure to heal and regenerate is problematic. To that extent, I agree that it could become challenging. This duty burdenness, responsibilityness.
First reaction to that longish answer is, oh, when will I reach that point where sadhana becomes a effortless thing and a part of one's nature? Uh, and also a sense of gratitude to some of the lines that you use, which one relates with very deeply in terms of, oh, some parts of sadhana have actually become effortless. Like the outlook itself is a great aspect of the understanding that one has reached to. So, for example, you know, so as an example, I have always been used to talking a lot, and it's only a couple of years back I realized that since this habit is not going away very easily, might as well pick up topics which are worth talking about. And of all the things that has helped me, uh, Vipassana meditation has been the greatest catalyst in terms of my understanding of how I operate and all of humanity operates, perhaps. So I started talking about it, and for a couple of years, it went on and on. And a lot of people relate to me as a practitioner, uh, even though there is no contact over many, many years, and sometimes as much as 15, 20 years. So 20 years later, if you were to go for a course and you would call me up and you would say that, you know what, I did a course. I sometimes am amused by the idea that you call me up and say, because you think that I will understand what you're talking about. And I do. The surprising part is that I relate to your happiness about, oh, after 20 years, you rediscovered the art of staying silent or your cause. So this has also happened, among other things. But over a period, I have now slowed down on that front, uh, accepting that everybody I speak to may not necessarily pick up the nuance of why this is being suggested. And it is again more talk, more verbiage about a topic that doesn't need selling. I think Dhamma by itself is so magnificent that whoever is willing to accept it will get it. I do not need to be an agent of selling it to people, sorts. So I'm coming to a far more uh, cool down version of that idea. If you come to me, um my daughter jokes about this sometimes. She says, of all the things that dad ever gets excited about, it is people who want to do a course. He will go all out and see if he can help in any manner. And he's as happy as he's doing the course. And so I'm trying to go easy on that one also. Okay, I need to be a little more accepting that people might not do a course and they may want to, but they may not sign up, and things like that may also happen. Uh, Attachment is attachment, no matter what it is to, uh, even if it is a good kind of attachment. Uh, this is in response to things that you said that I found that they resonate with me on a. So if I'm talking to somebody, do I weigh my words more than I used to before? Very often, yes. Uh, I find myself till yesterday night, in fact, I was thinking that I'm too serious about things. Uh, Today, speaking to you, I am seeing it in a different manner. That it's not seriousness; uh, it is weighing them, valuing them a lot more. So even if I'm having fun or cracking a joke, it's not that I'm not nasty or sarcastic. These things happen. Those are the side effects of my intellectual uh, prowess. But there is this inherent need to be kind. I find uh, this underlies a lot of things now. Comparatively, of course, I will still be sometimes saying a cruel thing. I do not know. Unknowingly or knowingly, sometimes in a fight, I'm trying to win the upper hand and I will end up saying hurtful things. Uh, so these are some thoughts that came to me while you were talking in terms of, okay, it's a good journey because it has changed me without me realizing some parts of it. So, okay, that brings me to a nice last question of sorts. You did mention it is not a linear path, but is there any methodology that instinctively tells you that it's working for you? And if there is, what is it? What are the things that you sense or which assure you that these practices and this aspect of slowing yourself down in silence uh, has worked for you? Is there any such thing that has happened?
So right from the yeah, there are some things that I won't be able to talk about because they're best not described in words. They're best experienced first person. So I'll leave that out in the conversation. Um, but yes, I think there are several indicators of this. One is your sensitivity to others, your ability to see the storms of the others. There is actually a kavita. Actually, I can probably. The first line is lifted from a popular kavita, and the second line is just happened. कि मैं अकेला ही चला था मैं अकेला ही चला था खुद से मिलता गया कारवां दिखाई देता गया. So when I see myself more clearly, I see others also slightly more clear. That helps a lot in sensitivity, in handling conflicts, handling politics, handling desires, uh, establishing connection, building trust, and those things. As you keep going, you sort of have this feeling of flow states when you experience them. And then when you're in those flow states, you're not looking for the non-flow states because you are in the flow states. And that itself is the reward. Uh, Not that one is looking for the reward, but yeah. There is also a growing belief in the unknown, the unknowable. There's a belief and trust in that quite a bit. There is the whole body experience of suddenly the whole body feeling either a flame or a bliss. So several indicators tell you, uh, and of course you have the usual productivity and creativity demands that the demands of the society. That's also very recently placed. Your sincerity to do the work, which I think is falling again in the society. Your ability to be honest and vulnerable to people, no matter the backfire. Whole host of things.
Virtual hug, Hemant. That was such a beautiful answer. That is such a beautiful answer. So relatable. So uh, there is so much kindness emanating from that answer alone, even if the rest of the episode is not looked at as of right now. And that's so strengthening in its own way, in a very calming sort of way, not in an agitated kind of. Uh, Wonderful, wonderful, and what a lovely thought it was to discuss the pace of life today. I am realizing that literally this episode, if seen in context, would be a speed breaker of sorts. Uh, because each and every question and answer seem to be integrated so well into that point of the topic itself that we could not have planned it even if we had used our entire prowess. So on that beautiful note, I would not use many more words. Thank you so much for being a part of the values workshop. Now you're a regular, and I hope that you stay a regular, because these conversations are an oasis in this um, beautiful journey. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you for sensing good discovery. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.